So today on Simply Happy Conversations, I'm talking with Julie Morehouse, and she is from Good Maker Tales, and it's a website about sustainable and ethical fashion and also home as well. And she's going to be sharing some takeaways for us around how toxic fashion and also the soft furnishing in our homes are affecting us, and maybe how we can also build a non-toxic future. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here.
It's so lovely to have you. I know, and you're on the other side of the world, so it's hard to sort of match up time and stuff. So I really appreciate you finding the time to actually chat with me today.
Likewise.
So maybe start with, so we could get to know you a little bit. If you were a Barbie doll, what would be the 2 accessories that would show some of your interests and hobbies that you like?
Gosh, wow. Some running trainers, because I like to go running, and my passport, maybe.
Ooh, so your passport. So tell us a bit about that. What?
Well, I'd like to get rid of my passport and get a European one, because having an English passport is now absolutely useless because of Brexit, and it's very difficult. I live in Madrid, and travelling in and out of Madrid now is very difficult with a British passport. You have to sit in very long queues. I've historically travelled a lot. I used to travel with my job. I had a few years out between jobs and backpacked around the world. So I've travelled quite a lot, and now I have children. I don't really travel anymore.
Yeah, I relate to you the same. I lived in, England for 3 years and then back to Australia, and yeah, we barely have gone anywhere since having kids, apart from Thailand and Bali, and that's about it now. So yeah.
I'm also a lot more conscious of my kind of carbon footprint than I ever was in the past. I do fly back to England to see family, and we have actually taken the ferry a few times, which we love. Takes a bit longer, but it's actually more expensive. But it's really, really good.
And is that from?
So we're going
is that from Spain? Does it go from Spain across? Yeah. Oh wow! Oh, that's that.
Yeah, it goes from the north of Spain, Santander, to Plymouth at the south of England. It's about 18 hours.
Oh, wow.
So it's really nice. It's nice. You get a cabin and you get up and have breakfast, and then you rush off. It just arrives in the morning.
Oh, that's a good experience. So it's overnight. Yeah.
It's really good fun.
Yeah, that would be a different experience as well.
It is, yeah. Except for a couple of years ago when I just had my second daughter, and when we got to Santander, I realised that I'd forgotten my passport.
Oh, no.
So I'd definitely be a Barbie doll with my passport attached to my hand.
And so if I was able to come over there to Madrid and work with you as a professional organiser in your home, or it could be online, what area would you love assistance with? What area you're a hot mess with?
Well, definitely children's stuff, I have to say, because especially when they're so little, they just grow so fast, and I'm constantly trying to just figure out what to do with the clothes that they've grown out of. And just having the time to kind of I donate a lot of them through, there's a Facebook page here called Trash to Treasure. But it's just getting round to it, taking the pictures, advertising it, getting people to come around, organising their toys, which I do every single day, the books, mending them, and then even organising my own clothes. I don't buy really many new clothes anymore. I don't really buy new clothes. But I still have a lot of clothes that I've kept because I don't want to throw things away, because I realise it's not very sustainable, and that I probably should be upcycling or doing something with. Or donating to someone that really would like them. And I have done some of that as well. So yeah, there's probably clothes, children's stuff. I won't even go into my other half's possessions.
Yeah.
It's got far too many things.
You would love I had on a few episodes ago is Little Renters here in Australia, and she is taking people's clothes. She would take your whole wardrobe of certain brands, and then she rents them out to other people as a little bundle of clothes. Yeah, it's such a great business idea. and that's really local to us. But I'm not sure if there's many other. I didn't ask her about many other places around the world if they're doing it or where she'd sort of heard of it. But yeah, I think it's a great concept, and yeah, like she said, you know, it can be up to sort of 5 families can hire those clothes, and they get used and passed
Wow.
on, which is pretty amazing, isn't it?
So that's children's clothes she does
Only
it
children's
for?
clothes. Yes, bundles
Amazing,
of
right?
children's clothes. Yeah, which is a great initiative. So then, talking about your business, tell us about. So, how did you get into the Good Maker Tales? Like, what was sort of that? Yeah, where was it born from?
Yeah. Well, my background is in real estate. I was a chartered surveyor, which is a qualification in the UK to work in real estate. And I'd been doing that for nearly 20 years, but very, very interested in sustainability, green buildings, being sustainable. Although I didn't really think about a lot. I didn't think at all about my wardrobe. It didn't occur to me at all. And I started reading more and more about it. I watched a film called The True Cost, which really talks about where our clothes are made. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and I took a few courses then in sustainable fashion. But at the same time, I got made redundant. It was in the middle of COVID, 6 months pregnant. And I just thought, I don't want to go back to mainstream kind of work. I don't want to go back to what I was doing. And so I decided to start up something online, and I knew it had to be around sustainability. And the more that I got into learning about sustainable fashion, I became an ambassador for Remake, who are an advocacy organisation for garment worker rights. And I just thought it has to be about sustainable fashion. And particularly, I started off really focusing on the UK, because every time I looked for anything sustainable, it would always be about the States or Australia or stuff that just I wasn't going to get shipped, to me. And there's definitely much more of an interest in sustainability and sustainable fashion in the UK than there is in Spain, where I'm based. So I decided to kind of keep to my home country in terms of knowledge and audience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Again, you have some amazing articles on your blog, which I'll definitely share links to. Really interesting. I was like, yeah, just kept going back and going, oh, I like this. And I like how you've broken it up into fashion and home. And, you can go either way or jump across both, but it's really looking at the soft furnishings and fashion all as one thing, which, it's the material and what they're being used to make them, isn't it?
Yes. And we just don't think about it. I just never thought about it. I thought about what looked nice.
Yes, yeah.
I really didn't think about it.
But now, just this environment, we need to be thinking more about the environment. That's come to sort of the forefront over the years. And so these things, it's about the education. If we don't have the education, how are we going to know? Like, how are we going to make a difference if we don't have the education? So it's about people like you sharing this with everyone else so that we can build up education for people to then go, oh, right, I'd never thought about that, and want to make the change.
Yeah. And I mean, as we mentioned briefly before, the thing about non-toxic is just something that hadn't occurred to me at all, that my clothes could be making me ill. Or that my sofa could be making me ill if I got, I remember in the past having a sofa where I paid extra to have it made stain resistant.
Yes.
And you pay extra to have it made stain resistant. And actually that's really toxic.
Yeah. That's
forever chemicals. It's PFAs. And they're really bad for us. But yet they're found in 99% of the population to differing degrees. So it's just, you suddenly realize that you have to consider what you're buying from a totally different perspective.
Yeah. Especially that we know what they're doing now, what it's doing to our body. We have that knowledge now, don't we?
Yeah. And I didn't really know about it until I listened to a podcast on the great, the podcast Claire Press does, which is called it's something my wardrobe.
Yes.
I've forgotten what it's called now.
That is one of my favourites every week that I love to tune in and listen to as well. And I have talked about her on my podcast a few times. Yeah, she's great, isn't she? And she's, based in Australia, but she's from the UK as well.
She is?
Yeah.
Yes, she is. And she was interviewing somebody who had a beauty brand who had been part of a Greenpeace study several years ago where they'd looked at people's the forever chemicals in people's bodies. And this particular lady had a huge amount of forever chemicals in her body, and she was so surprised because she thought she lived a really healthy life. And it turns out it mostly come from a lot of beauty products. So that really got me thinking about. And actually, there's another podcast where they talked about fertility as well, and how fertility rates have dropped over time. And so that whole kind of a combination of those two things really got me thinking about chemicals and the effects on our bodies, which led me to learn about how polyester underwear can affect our fertility. And it just led me to learn a lot more about the toxic chemicals in our clothes, in our soft furnishings, and how they're affecting us. There's not kind of a lot of really kind of solid studies, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence about ways that people have been affected, particularly airline crew who have been affected and even died. And I was reading recently from their brightly coloured uniforms that they have to wear for a long, long period of time for certain airlines. And that has been, I think those have been the most famous cases reported. But we know that these chemicals are in our clothes, and they know that they have these effects. So, I'm sure there'll be a lot more evidence coming out.
Definitely. Wardrobe crisis. So I had to get it up for you.
That's
Claire
it.
Press. Yes, it's great, isn't it? And I'll definitely link to it. So maybe talk about some of the fabrics or some of the materials that are being used and their effects on our bodies, like polyester in particular.
Yeah, so polyester obviously is a synthetic material which is made from fossil fuels, and it's highly flammable. So it's very often used with flame retardants. And flame retardants are a form of forever chemicals as well. So polyester is particularly, anything with a flame retardant in it, and anything that's synthetic and has to be treated. Things that are treated to become wrinkle resistant, or like I mentioned, stain resistant, flame resistant. Plastic phthalates are used to soften plastics to make kind of plastic prints on our t-shirts and things. Dyes, so azo dyes are historically very, very toxic. They've now banned some of the most toxic azo dyes, but I think there's still a lot of them in circulation. So they're just in everything, really. And even, we think about cotton as being an amazing natural product, but actually it's heavily chemically processed, and it's the biggest crop that uses it's the biggest pesticide using crop in the world. So it uses something like 16% of the world's pesticides, is something like that, for cotton, and a massive amount of insecticides as well. So organic cotton is definitely the way to go in terms of cotton. But then looking at other great natural materials as well, like linen and hemp, that are really hemp is making a comeback. It doesn't have to be that kind of frumpy, I'm wearing a hemp sack, I'm into sustainable fashion.
Yeah. But that is, isn't it? It's the bamboo and then your cotton versus each other, like how much water we need to produce the cotton as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to...
Yeah, it's huge amount of water. And then obviously the washing and finishing and treating as well, again, uses a lot of water. There was a World Wildlife Fund report that says that one cotton t-shirt can take 2,700 litres of water to make. It's just like, how can that be? How can that be? But that's, I trust what they've said. Another fabric that's historically very dirty but getting a lot better is viscose. So for starters, historically has used a lot of wood from endangered forests, but also it's made with very toxic chemicals to process the wood pulp. So now there's a lot more eco-friendly alternatives that are coming from fast-growing forests in Austria, Bavaria, beech trees from fast-growing eucalyptus, lyocell, modal, and they use closed-loop systems where they recycle the chemicals back into the production. They use less toxic chemicals to begin with, and they recycle them back. So they're not basically washing them out into local communities' waterways, because it's toxic as well for people who live near to these plants. Yeah. It's not just as the end wearer.
Yeah, and that's the bit that we, I don't know about you, but when we were talking about this only yesterday with my family, my kids, like the clothes that we would buy, because we were talking about saying having 2 nice jumpers during winter and 2 nice t-shirts in the summer, and you'd just be wearing the same ones. And even my husband was saying, oh, I would even wear my footy uniform after footy on the weekend if it wasn't that dirty, because we just didn't have heaps of clothes. And our kids were like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, clothes were expensive. They're actually pretty much the same price as they used to be. Some of you good brands now, that's just generally what, clothes cost. A jumper was $80.
Yeah.
And now they're, our Kmart and Target have got these fast fashion so cheap. But that's the thing, it's the education around it, like trying to tell them, that's a lot cheaper to go and buy it, but what's it doing to our environment right now? So it's educating, I think, more than anyone. For me, it's the younger generation who just see, circular fashion. They don't understand the whole circular fashion. It's just, I've got it fast. Yeah. I can wear it and it's cheap. They can afford it is the other thing.
Yeah. Interestingly, Gen Z are the biggest kind of buyer of secondhand fashion, but at the same time, they're also the biggest buyer of companies like Shein.
Yes.
And Shein, only last week, a report came out talking about toxic chemicals, that children's wear was found to have 400 times the approved or kind of safe levels of chemicals in children's clothes and shoes and bags.
Wow.
Just like, how can that be?
Yes.
How can that be?
So how can we find out about that? Like looking at the chemicals that are in clothes, like what's some of the strategies that you could do to sort of educate yourself by looking at your clothing that you purchase?
I mean, interestingly, just on LinkedIn the other day, there was somebody posted an article about wouldn't this be nice? And it was like a food label, but it was for clothes.
Yep.
It's a nutrition label for clothes. These are the chemicals. This is this. And unfortunately, they don't exist yet. I mean, some brands are bringing out digital product passports, and some really great brands like Skip from Sweden. A couple of other brands are starting to kind of like really break down their carbon use, their water use, carbon emissions, I should say, water use, and the cost even of their products. But I think the only way to really know that you're not having heavily chemically processed clothes is to make sure that you're kind of buying organic clothes, organic materials, or looking for great symbols like Oekotex. OEKOTEX, Oekotex, which is a certification and label. You see it in a lot of children's clothes, but it's chemical free, or that it's an approved level. Or Blue Sign is another one that's similar to Oekotex. So I really look out for that, certainly in terms of children's clothing. And GOTS, which is the Global Organic Textile Standard, which also means that there's no kind of nasty chemicals in your products. So unfortunately, I think what you can look for is brands that show you they haven't got that, but brands that do have that won't be telling you.
Yeah. And is there like lists online that you can look up around that as well? No,
not that I know of. I mean, what's great is the Fashion Transparency Index, in terms of which is run by Fashion Revolution, and it's released every single year, and that just looks at how transparent brands are, and they rate brands as to how transparent they are. Actually, H&M and OVS are at the top. OVS were the top scoring brand last year. That just says that they are transparent. So then you need to kind of educate yourself, unfortunately, and go and look at their website to see how transparent they are about the chemicals that are being used. But I think the only way to make sure that there's no chemicals in your clothes is to look for organic clothing, and to look for clothing that has these labels like Oekotex or Blue Sign, because it's just not publicly yet. And I actually put a comment on this LinkedIn thing, and I said, you know what, I remember, and it's particularly relevant to me because I'm celiac, so I can't eat gluten. I remember it was around my birthday, which is November. I remember it being like a birthday present, that they changed the food labelling laws that you had to say if there were allergens in the food. And it was like a revolution for me, because I could easily find out the things that had gluten in. And, it felt like a whole new world, because I used to have a book that would be updated every year, and I had to go through the book and see if I could eat it or not. So I just think that, it's happened in the food industry. there's a lot of pressure for it to happen in the clothing industry. There's brands that are already doing it. Digital product passports are becoming more and more the norm. And I just think brands that don't do it will get left behind, and they'll get shouted out by people like the Fashion Transparency Index, by people like Good On You that we talked about before, who rate brands. They're another good place to look. They don't specifically focus on chemicals, but they do talk about the environmental impact of the products. And so I think people, as these become more and more well known, people will look for that more and more, and brands that don't do it will just get left behind. And hopefully at the same time, governments might start regulating a bit more than they already are. And governments are regulating to a degree against certain chemicals, but look at what's happening with Shein, I had this discussion just the other day about who is responsible. If we're in the West and we're buying products from China, which law applies? Is it the law that China is making those products with, or is it the law that we expect our products to conform to? And it's a bit of a grey area, I think, as to where that regulation lies.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think we've just got to be really vigilant.
Definitely. I like the idea, though, of it being on products. I mean, we've done it in food, so why can't we do it in textiles as well? So looking at, say, soft furnishings in your home, because it's made me go, oh, yeah, like that's towels and, sheets and covers, quilt covers and floor coverings. What are the things that we'd be looking for in those? What are some things that people could realize, oh, this is probably not, because unless you look at, I'm not sure if you look at the composition of it, but I know for myself, we bought a rug and it really smelled. And I was like, I don't think we want this rug in this house because I can smell the chemicals all over it. As soon as we unlooked it, took it out of its plastic.
Yeah, it's really interesting about that, because I just bought a rug for my little girl's bedroom, and I specifically bought one that had a Viscose approval on it. And it still smells a bit. So I'm a little bit like, why does it smell? I have confidence that it's okay, but their window is well and truly open. I've left it airing outside for a long time. So I don't know why that is. I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately, but it is definitely things. So you can start to get Ecotex certified things, but we're not going to go and all change all of our sofas and change all of our carpets in our housing, in our houses, and all of our curtains, etc. So I think it is things like stain resistance. If you've had your items made stain resistant, there's a high chance they might have forever chemicals in them, unfortunately. Even just quickly flicking back to clothes, waterproof clothing as well is quite well known to have forever chemicals in. But also things like foam mattresses. We have a foam mattress and I really want to get it changed to kind of more natural materials. And so I'm looking at natural materials, which can be a combination of wool, silk, even natural latex. And there's a kind of even organic mixture of organic cotton, still with springs, but we're kind of like padded with wool and natural products and natural materials and coated with natural materials. Even some of them have silk, mohair, cashmere. There's all sorts of ingredients in these natural mattresses now that you see. And I certainly in the past never ever thought about what was in my mattress.
That's something
at all, apart from
you're sleeping on it for how many hours of the day of a day as well. So it's probably a really important thing for us to be considering, and even sitting on our couch, isn't it? It's something that when it's time to replace, it's something we should be looking at and thinking about. What's a more natural one that I could replace it with?
Yeah. I mean, things that you can do that is a smaller and easier fix. It's something that I've done here is I've bought a wool mattress topper.
Oh, yeah. That's a good idea.
An organic wool mattress topper, which I feel like, that's kind of like a nice layer in between.
It's a barrier, isn't it?
Yeah. So I bought those for both of my children because I didn't even know about this a couple of years ago, about what was in our mattresses. Didn't even know. As well. So yeah, I think it's obviously really important for them, little wool pillows, what you're putting your head on, but you can even get wool pillow protectors. So you don't have to go full stream and full steam and buy a new mattress or buy new everything. And I definitely think, and this is going back to sustainable fashion as well, it's not all about buying everything new. It's about making the best of what you already have. in the case of toxic chemicals, obviously that's that's different. I would say also as well, washing everything before you use it.
Yeah.
I certainly do that. Not that you can do that with your mattress or your sofa, but for soft furnishings, washing everything before you use it. And certainly with children's clothes, I wash everything before I use them. Although I buy most of their clothes now secondhand.
Yeah, yeah. But that's a great tip. The two, like thinking about what could you do as a barrier in between rather than, upgrading the mattress straight away until you actually need to. Or also, like you just said, about the clothes as well. And so going back to that, what's some of the things then, that tips that people could do that can help them build a non-toxic future for their family? So any, like I love those two, but do you have any other ones, maybe like around, I don't know, cost per wear and things like that when they're going out to shop, things that they could consider?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I certainly, talking about cost per wear, rental is a really good option. I mean, you talked before about children's rental, but also like, I've spent a lot of money before on dresses to wear to a wedding. That I've worn once. And in fact, I've got a particular dress I've just worn recently again to another wedding. And I just thought, I've worn it twice, and it was quite an expensive dress. And now I just think, why did I do that? I could have bought a really nice jacket for that I would have worn on a daily basis. So another thing is sleeping on it. Don't just see something that you like and buy it. In fact, I very rarely buy new stuff anymore. But if I do buy new stuff, I really, really think about it. In fact, there was a particular jumper that I really liked from Bamboo Clothing, and I didn't buy it until the following year. That's how long I took to think about it. So, sleep on it. Don't impulse buy. I think that's a big, kind of really big thing, because it's so easy to just buy stuff that you don't need because you see it and you think, oh, that was nice, I could do with that. Do you really need it? And like you say, cost per wear, how often are you going to wear your clothes?
So that jumper that jumper you bought, so how many times have you worn it now since you got it though? So
I've worn it a lot.
So the cost per wear of that jumper is probably really low now.
Yes, exactly. One thing I would say about sustainable fashion, and something that I'm also trying to kind of campaign for a little bit, is getting more of sustainable fashion brands in physical spaces in front of customers, because sometimes when you buy stuff online, it's not necessarily what you always were expecting. And it would be really nice to see more sustainable brands in physical spaces. So I think if you see a pop-up or sustainable brands opening stores, try and support them, because a lot of brands, sustainable brands, operate on much, much smaller margins. And they do kind of need the support from people. And I feel like conflicted as well, because my biggest message is don't buy too much, but at the same time I'm saying here's what you can buy. And I think the way that I think about that is, I know that people who read my website are much more conscious about what they're buying. But also, if you're going to buy something, people aren't going to stop buying overnight, unfortunately. They're just not. It's not going to happen. Buy it from a sustainable brand, support a sustainable brand. It makes a big, big difference to that brand, and it makes a big difference to the environment. And gradually over time, we're buying less stuff from fast fashion brands, but nobody needs to be perfect. It's not always possible to do everything perfectly. Sometimes you just have to live your life, and you can't research the most sustainable X, wait for it to be ordered. You just need that thing now, and you need it to be convenient. And you don't beat yourself up about that. We can't. It's not about being perfect. No, nobody's perfect. I'm definitely not perfect on my sustainability life or journey.
Yes, no.
It's a journey.
Now I have to just quickly flick to a page because I haven't got to talk to her yet. But because just of time difference, actually it was sickness. But have you heard of Shades of Green? And it's from Kate Lutchins from Sustainable Lifestyle. She's here in Australia and she's just released a book, and she talks about the different shades of green. And so we just adapt to the shade of green that's related to us. So if that means at the moment you can afford a woolen pillowcase as the barrier, that's the shade of green. Maybe it's like recycling. At the moment, it might be just your bottles in your house. That's your shade of green. So it might be a slight green. It might be then the full green if you can do everything. But yeah, it's looking at like you just said, like what can you manage at the moment financially, but also with time as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can give a really good example. I was home at Christmas and I was in a big department store called John Lewis, and I wanted to buy some tights, and I picked up a pair of tights, and they said that they were wool tights, and when I turned them over, it said something like 67% viscose, 20% something else, and about 7% wool. And I was just like, that's a complete joke. You know, that's not wool tights. Do you know what? I bought them because they didn't have any that were more wool, and I needed some tights. So what's the alternative? The alternative is that you go home, you research, you know, sustainable woolen tights or sustainable winter tights, and you wait for them to arrive. And then perhaps they're not the right size or they're not quite the right feel or whatever, because like I was saying, touching and feeling is really important as well. And so I bought them because sometimes you just have to live your life and you just need stuff. And, you know, I didn't feel like I was being excessive in buying a pair of tights. So, and you know, I forgive myself. And generally I don't buy leather shoes. And I don't buy leather shoes for my children unless they're secondhand. And I say secondhand, but secondhand are barely worn. But you know, a year or so ago, I needed some shoes for my eldest daughter, and I bought her some leather shoes, and I was just like, I just have to do that. You know, sometimes you just have to do what you have to do, and you do as, like you say, your shade of green, and you do as much as you can, and don't beat yourself up about it.
Yes, exactly. We're doing the best that we can, isn't it? It has been so wonderful to chat to you and to hear some tips. People can listen back and really think about the furnishings and the clothes that they have in their home and what they can do about maybe changing that and looking at the more sustainable options, but also thinking about it in the aspect of their own health, and definitely going to your website. So where can people find you? Because that is where all the great information is.
Yeah, so it's goodmakertales.com, or you can email me, julie@goodmakertales.com as well. I'd love to hear from people. It's really nice to hear from people.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie, for your time and all your knowledge.
Thank you for yours. It's really nice to talk to you.